Welcome to the Happy in the Mess podcast. We are your hosts, Marlena, Sherry, and Matthew. We are therapists and coaches, and we want to share our own stories with you, as well as the wisdom, insights, and tips we've learned along the way. Thanks for tuning in to this episode.
Welcome to the Happy in the Mess podcast. Thank you for joining us. As we round out the end of 2022 and turn our thoughts to 2023, it's a great time to reflect and plan. We'll be talking about how to create the life you really want to live. I'm joined today by Coach Marlena, who is the dating coach, and Matthew, who is the misfit coach. And I am Sherry, the couples relationship coach. Before we dive into our topic, I wondered if you guys had any stories you could share about maybe a mess that you have found yourself in this year and how you've worked through it or any wins that came from it.
I'm wondering how in the world we're at 2023 already. You just said that and it just hit me all. I was like, wait a minute, this is like it. I mean, it's just a shock. The first thing that really jumps to mind for me was this was a big year for restructuring the practice. I made a lot of big leaps ahead and failed really miserably at a couple of them. And it was as I look back, I mean, there were a couple places where it was really touch and go, where I was like, I'm just going to sell the practice, I'm going to be done, I'm going to go work for somebody else. Lost sight of, really where I wanted to be for a hot minute. I joke around, I threw in the towel and then I picked it up and wiped myself off and kept on going. And I think that's really been the big motto for this year, was just a lot of learning experiences, a lot of learning to be gracious with myself. As therapists and coaches, we have certain skill sets that come really easily. And then I think other ones like business ownership and management were not necessarily taught. So those become part of the school of hard knocks. So a lot of times I just tell people in the words of the great prophets, I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's a great win for me.
Yeah, I love that towel idea. Throw in the towel and then pick it up and get back to work. That's great. Marlena, what about for you?
Well, a couple big things happened for me this year. I mean, one is still I really launched the business this year. And so that was a huge struggle. And I'm going to call myself now a recovering doer. I want to do less and trust a little more that things can work out and I don't have to be so stressed out about it all the time and like work so hard to do the things. Like there is such a thing as being productive while also feeling relaxed. And the other thing is, I went through this breakup this year and that grief had been really knocked me down, but it also allowed me a chance to learn how to really be happy in that mess and redirect my thinking and realize that I am the maker of my own misery in a sense. I can turn, I went to the altar to wail and worship at sadness and the past and regret. And I was the one participating in that. I went to go wail and worship at the altar of sadness. So, learning how not to do that. It took a little bit of time, but my meditation practice really carried me through and helped me to quiet the mind long enough to have a new set of thoughts flow in that weren't so wretched. And so
it's been interesting to watch you take those insights and turn them into some resources that are going to be really helpful to others.
Thank you. Yeah. Heartbreak Cure is coming out, everybody, soon. My mini course on heartbreak, if you're going through it, and lived and learned. Yeah. Took some evidence-based practices too out of my counseling practice to apply to that. That was very helpful.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear how that goes. I think my mess, I've had several messes also that I've had to work through, mostly with the businesses. But one of my big messes was that my daughter had a whole bunch of medical crises this year. And while that was really hard to work through, I also see how our relationship has gotten a lot closer. So I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't say it was worth it, but I also wouldn't that's a really special thing.
Absolutely. Very admirable what you two shared. I just wanted to comment on that. It's so helpful, I think, for our listeners to hear that we have hardship and how we get through it. I know we named the podcast after that, but it's difficult to listen to people who seem to have it all and never experienced any hardship. And I find the stories of hardship overcoming that just tremendously more helpful, inspiring.
We absolutely all are facing our own stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. And as a counselor, like we're taught to like stay behind that blank face. And I think it's really helpful for me to be able to share some of that instead of just having that and pretending that it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I was listening to a lecture by Victor Yalom actually just this morning, who just is an amazing psychotherapist. And one of the things he shared was that this idea of sharing our hearts. And he talked about when he was first in therapy, working through how his therapist was the blank slate. And he said he didn't get a lot out of it. And so he talked about his self-disclosure and how he talks about himself therapeutically with clients. And it was a beautiful open conversation, and it was nice to hear that from somebody who's uh, that far along, and I think that much of just a pinnacle, I think, of what we do.
Absolutely. It's really hard to learn from someone who appears to be perfect or not struggling.
Mm,
It's like, what can I learn from that? You didn't struggle.
right.
Yeah.
Someone just asked me this weekend, they said that they follow me on social media and they read through my stuff and it's really good, but they wonder how much of it I use. And so,
Mm.
yeah, that's my reassurance. Like I have to work at my relationship just like everybody else.
Absolutely.
So the new year is a good time for reflection. I know for me, it's one of those benchmark places where I say, okay, what happened? What do I want to do? So I wondered how you guys figure out what it is that you want so that you can create that life that you want.
Well, I think looking at the contrast, meaning looking at all the things that did not go well this year, has actually been a huge help for me to understand how do I want to create this next year? What do I want to focus on by not repeating the past? I love when I'm confronted with something really tragic or terrible in a sense, not to be Pollyannish about it, but it really shows me where I'm at mentally and emotionally and how I can help change that. And like really shows me, oh, like I got COVID and I sprained my ankle and I was going through a lot of grief and I was still trying to push through all these business new ideas and launches. And it's like, whoa, 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 like, whoa. I didn't need to do all of that all at once. This is how come I got so run down and broken down, and I don't want to do that next year. I want to be much more gentle with myself. If I had a word to describe how 2022 was for me, I would say somewhere between stress and grief. Like those were the dominant themes. And it's very easy to be like, oh, I want relaxation and some enjoyment. It's just so like, what are the opposite of those things? And positivity. What
Yeah,
about you, Matthew?
absolutely. No, and I think that's having a natural barrier like a year change, or a natural boundary. It really gives us that chance to maybe just pause for a moment. And I'm very intentional with my practice. I have done this for a long time, where I will shut down between Christmas and New Year. Um, and that's literally what I have done. I've just kind of shut down. I've spent some time with my family, been able to have some enjoyable things, gotten a lot of house projects done. My wife and I were just joking around that like we've gotten so much done, but there's almost nothing to show for it because it's, cleaning, repair, maintenance, it's nothing flashy. Um, but I think having this moment to just kind of pause and reflect, and I think seeing what worked well, seeing what does not or did not work well, not in a shameful sense,
Right.
to where we bury it, but we just kind of take a look and say, hey, things aren't quite working as well with this, what's going on with it, and it gives us that chance to pause and reflect rather than just the metaphor sometimes is, if you have a plumbing leak, you just keep taping over it and taping over it, taping over it. And at some point you need to get rid of everything holding it together and do the serious repair, and take the time to do that. And I think this is that natural flow for it.
Amen. Well said.
Do either of you have a formal practice? Like some people set New Year's resolutions or they set goals for the next year or a word for the next year. Do you guys have any practices like that?
I do.
I
Go ahead, Matthew.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I do have a girlfriend who we call each other right before the new year to discuss sort of a reflection of the previous year and what we'd like to see and create in the new year. And it's sort of like having an accountability buddy almost. And I do write these things down, and I also like I do the Spanish tradition every year with the grapes. I don't know if you all heard of this. You eat 12 grapes to represent 1 month of every month of the new year with a wish for every month. And it's not necessarily has to be sequential, but sort of like 12 goals to really like think about and focus on and kind of set an intention for. And I do that every year. And so I was looking back at my previous New Year's with the 12, and I think I did about half of them, which I think is really great for me. Like, I'd rather do too many and make half than do not enough and make none. So I appreciate that's kind of my little ritual.
I've never heard of the grapes before, so thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. Yeah, it's funny you said that because I just heard about it this week from another friend who does the similar tradition. And my silly self is like, I wonder if I can put all 12 in at the same time, but I don't think that's the point of it,
You can't, you're supposed to eat them in the last 12 seconds too. It's very difficult.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what she said. It was like, yeah, it had to be fairly quickly. But no, and for me, I don't necessarily have a formal practice. I think I'm being my personality type. I blame it on my Enneagram 4, where I just don't do what everybody else does because I don't. Yeah, if everybody else is making New Year's resolutions, I'm not going to. If they're all making it, I'm not going to. But I do try to keep general principles in mind. As a matter of fact, I have 2 major projects that I really wanted to accomplish this year, and I did not get to them. And so those are now, it's okay because it wasn't the right time, but now they're all things that will come around again. And so I've made the point of what does it take to be able to attend these events. And so I've kind of set those as my benchmarks of things. Those are the big parts to fit in, and then everything else is going to get kind of restructured around that.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
good. Yeah. And that carryover from one year to the next and not getting so frustrated that it didn't happen, but allowing that just to flow into the next year. One of the things that I've done over the past couple of years, and I haven't done it yet this year, so a good reminder for me to do it, is I go back through my calendar and I write down the things that I actually completed or goals that I met or new things that I learned how to do. And I haven't done that this year, but this year I have done so many new things that
Mm.
I think that will help me feel more positive about 2022 when there was so much mess mixed in with everything.
Mhm. I think there's been so much growth between all of us. I mean, I've seen both of you grow just in your own practices and understandings, and I just want the listeners to know too, like who we were at the beginning of the year is not who we are now. Like there has been tremendous growth for everybody. And it is really great and a confidence builder to go back and reflect like, wow, January me of 2022 is not December me of 2022 at all.
Yeah. Sometimes I think those resolutions can carry too much weight. And
Mm.
it's like this idea. So you set them and then you drop them and then you move on. And then you get back to the end of the year and you look back and you say, oh, yeah, I really wanted to do that, but I didn't. So,
Mm.
how do you kind of make those changes or those goals last through the whole year?
Mm.
For me, I think if it's something that's a priority, there's going to be a natural flow to it. I always, I think there's this idea of if it's super important, it's going to have a flow to it. There's going to be more energy to it. And I think the thing with resolutions a lot of times is we bite off more than we can chew, or try to do too much, or we try to be at somebody else's standard.
Yes.
And as those fall away, we sometimes there's this internalizing of it, like, oh, shameful, I couldn't do this. I couldn't get to the gym 7 days a week. Well, how many days were you going before? None. Well, 0 to 7 is way too
Unlikely.
big of a thing, right? It's not
Yeah.
likely. And there's any equivalent of that. And I think a lot of times with New Year's resolutions, we either reach too far or reach in somebody else's direction. And I'm trying to take up their what they need, but that's not what I need. It's not where I'm at right now. So I think we really have to weigh that out. When we fail something, sometimes it's a success because we've learned that that's not our burden to carry, or that's not the way we're supposed to carry it.
Yeah,
I love that.
failure and success, that's such an important thing. We think about success as taking steps forward, and it's a linear process, but usually it's not. There's so much backtracking and backsliding and figuring out how to make it work.
And pivoting and being like, oh, not quite this way, but this way. I love what you said about Matthew, like not comparing ourselves to others. You know, I love that quote. That's the death of joy, you know, comparison. But also like doing your reflection in private, I mean, I think is important too when you think about what you want for the new year, and not being like, what are other people doing for themselves in the new year? Because that may not be, and usually is not my or your path. Like I can't emphasize that enough. I think that is such a good thing, because we are so unique and we are all creating in our own unique ways. And I also love this whole idea of like, don't make these goals that are so far from where you are, but trust that once you gain some momentum, you may end up getting there if you take just a baby step in the next direction. You know, I'm not going to start training for a marathon today if I haven't been running for years. Like, I mean, well, maybe, but like, I mean, the small things. I think about like what I've been doing physically, for example, to help me get back in shape. And I knew that like trying to make myself go to the gym 7 days a week just wasn't going to cut it. So what I ended up doing is just altering my nutrition just a tiny bit, just drinking more protein in the morning, a protein shake. And that has already I've started losing like inches. Like just a tiny little thing has started to produce tremendous results. And now I feel more energetic because I feel lighter in my body. And now I'm actually working out more, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, which is great because it was going from 0 to 3 or 4 is huge. So like, but it started with just like the small nutritional difference has helped me get there. So I like that idea of like, don't go all the way over there, you know, just do something small and that will gain momentum and lead you to big changes.
Yeah, that small change that you then get good at
Mm-hmm.
and you make it habit, and then
Exactly.
you build on it with the next thing.
Yep.
Change is not a light switch. You don't
No.
decide one day you're going to be different and then flip the switch and then there it is. You've got to like take those little steps in between.
Yeah. And having some patience and being gentle with yourself. Like, you know, if you're, yeah, it's hard to drop all that weight in 1 month. I mean, or whatever the thing is, like, it's not gonna happen that way, and be okay with it going a little slow. And the slower you go, the faster it will seem, like, you know, the more progress you'll make. I'm using now, a little mantra I'm telling myself every now and again to help me remain positive with these small changes I'm making is everything is working out for me and everything's happening at the time it's supposed to. To like remind myself, like, divine timing, like it's, you know, it may not be the time I thought it was going to be, but it's happening right when it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yep.
That's a good mantra to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And this will be the complete opposite of it. So I'm going to let my nerdiness completely fly loose here, and feel free to
Go
rein me
for
back
it.
in later. But
Go for it.
so one of my projects has been to pick up tabletop role-playing games as a therapeutic modality. So I have in turn started playing it more, which is my nice intellectual way of saying I get together and play D&D with a bunch, or Dungeons and Dragons with a bunch of people.
Nice.
And we were meeting yesterday, and just getting, without getting too lost in the details, we were getting just junky rolls, and it's all the roll of the dice. So a lot of it's random numbers. And we're plinking away, doing 1-2 damage to this big creature. And every time we'd get frustrated at it, the whole group is like, damage is damage. And, you know, we'd all get together and cheer. And I was like, oh my goodness, this really is therapeutic. Because, like, what if that happened? What if every time we met that little goal, somebody's like, you know what, that's all right. You know, you still did a little bit. You did a little bit, and you just kept on going. And having the whole party behind you, but with that, I mean, it was a really good moment. And I'm like, man, we really need to take that to heart in other areas of our life, I think.
I love that. Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
giving yourself the grace to be a beginner again. Like
Mhm.
anytime you set a new goal, like being a beginner and knowing that you're not going to quite do it all.
Mhm.
And then having your crowd, your cheering crowd, like I love
Yes.
that too. Someone's going to celebrate with you the little wins.
Mhm. Absolutely.
think a lot of people get frustrated with goals when they set that same goal every January, and then at the end of the year, they don't see any change. I think losing weight or eating healthier, those are the kinds of things that I think of when I think of that drop off. So, do you guys have any suggestions for how to make it from January to June and June to December as you're trying to create this life that you want?
Well, I'm going to go off on the woo-woo rant really quick because I have held this belief for I don't know how long since I've learned how to meditate like I don't say properly, there's no proper meditation, but since I've learned how to actually sit and quiet my mind, I think that is sort of the solution to so many issues simply because we are all unique. I agree with Matthew fully. Like we are all unique and the way I receive my little like hits of inspiration usually come when I've started to quiet the itty bitty shitty committee and the jibber jabber and all the things like so I get that when I get quiet and I feel like that is the pathway to not only peace but inspired action, which then leads me to the unique path to get me to my unique goal, if that makes sense. Sorry for the cussing. I didn't think I was supposed to do that, but I think 15 to 20 minutes of just sitting still has produced such tremendous results in my life. I can't even count the ways. So I have some free meditation audios if you go to my website, by the way, just FYI, because I do feel like that is the way to make it from January to December in your unique way.
Yeah, that's great. Matthew, what about for you?
Well, and I think examining why we haven't made our goals. Why are we setting these same goals? Are they not set right? Are we not keeping them in front of us? Do we not have a cheering committee? Are there other things that are going on? Again, using that losing the weight modality, there's healthy at any size. There's this idea of and I know when I first started my workouts, one of the things they had us do was take measurements of our body because and props because they understood it. Because after a month of doing this particular workout, I remember I gained 2 or 3 pounds. And if I'm using that as my scale, I'm like, well, screw this, I'm walking away. I'm mad. But looking at the photographs and looking at the measurement tapes, like I realized I was losing where I wanted to lose and gaining where I want to gain. So I think sometimes adjusting our scale, what are we using to measure this? Or again, is this a reasonable goal? Is it something where we just haven't had accountability in this? So I think really, and Marlene, you're absolutely right. Let's get quiet with ourselves and really examine why things aren't working. Not shaming. Why is this not working? What do I need to make this work? What other tools do there need to be? And then investing in whatever that may be.
That why question seems so important because if you're setting that goal for because someone else thinks you need to set it or because that's what other people are doing, that's going to fall apart. If you have tried several years and not made progress on it, then looking at why that has fallen apart and like what's not there to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I also think too, coupled with this practice of why or troubleshooting sort of what made it not work, looking at what did go well and capitalizing on all of that too in reflection of the year, like what was wonderful. And I got that from the Yoga Girl podcast, what was wonderful this year? What did I manifest? What am I grateful for? And that has a momentum to it as well. And that can start leading into the confidence and, good feelings and self-esteem to make other changes. What went well this year?
What do you guys think of this idea of self-sabotage? Where, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I feel like there's a whole topic, another episode in and of itself. I've got a lot of thoughts on self-sabotage. Matthew, you go ahead.
No, I'm the same way. I'm like, man, that is an episode, a couple episodes at least, I think. That self-sabotage, it depends on, again, where it's coming from, maybe. What are we doing that results in this, or why are we doing these things? And I think there is this concept sometimes we're maybe afraid of what success might mean if we do take this goal, if we do take this step and are able to do it. I think it's rooted in fear, regardless of what it is. If it's fear of failure, if it's fear of success, we just, a lot of times I think you get to that point where you're so afraid of everything, you hold on and you can't let go. And so it does end up as a sabotaging moment, whereas you do have to take that risk. And maybe one of the things to explore is maybe what's your relationship with failure? Are you so afraid of failing that you don't want to move? Versus, you know what, I might fall off my bike, but I'm going to get back on it again. Like, it's okay. I remember my son, one of the first times he rode his bike around the block, that big parental moment of like, how can I let him out of sight? And, here he is. And I remember he comes around the corner wheeling his bicycle, tears are coming out. And he had just completely biffed it, completely the opposite side of our house. So he had to do the walk of shame all the way around. But he's one that just, talk about self-sabotage. He never wants to make a mistake. And I was so proud of him, and I just hugged him, and we of course got him bandaged up and got the bike bandaged the best we could. It took a hit. But I really just wanted to speak into his life and just let him know how proud I was that he kept on going and kept pushing, and knew what to do. Because I think as adults, sometimes even we're so afraid to fail that we don't try anything.
Yeah. Yeah, we let kind of that shame permeate. And I think of Brene Brown, how she talks about perfectionism is really rooted in shame. This idea that I'm not going to make a mistake is just baloney. And what is it, that number? How many mistakes do we make a day? Like 17 or something? Like, I mean, it's ridiculously high, to think that we're going to just walk through the day in complete perfection. But with self-sabotage, Sherry, I think, I think about, I almost feel like, and I might be going out on a limb here, it's almost neurological if we're so used to doing something in a way that harms us, or staying in a negative path, or it's almost like repetitive. And it's hard to sort of break out of that neural pathway and create a new one. That's why, again, I'm going to bang the drum of meditation. I mean, to be quiet long enough in order to let yourself have a new thought. Because those thoughts also have, I think negativity has a lot of momentum behind it. And, or this idea I'm going to fail, or the belief that I'm not good enough. Like, it's very hard to slow that train down. But meditation is one way to slow it down, because it's unlikely, if I keep thinking those thoughts about myself that are hurtful, that I'm going to suddenly just start thinking, oh, I'm the most awesome thing ever, like immediately. I mean, this is where I think affirmations can fail people. And people think that they can just like switch, but your brain can't actually think something it doesn't believe. So you have to give it something a little believable that's just a little bit better than the thought you were having before. You can't just think I'm awesome if you're thinking you're a piece of crap. So what you can say is like, I really like my elbow. I have such a beautiful elbow. Like, just choose one little thing that you feel good about to start moving in another direction. Instead of like wholesale trying to buy into something your brain has not yet believed in.
Those are great tips. Thank you, guys. I think for me, I don't actually believe in self-sabotage. Maybe that's not, I don't know. I know a lot of people who do, so maybe that's just me. What I believe is that behavior is purposeful. And even if it is something that's hurting us, there's some positive gain from it. And so a lot of times it's digging in and figuring out if there's a different way that you can get that same gain. For instance, chocolate. I love to eat chocolate, and, I eat too much of it. But the real root of that is the comfort and joy that I get from that bite of chocolate. So if I want to give up chocolate, I actually have to find that same joy somewhere else so that I can let go of that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of replacement. I mean, like, and understanding what is this really about? And can I also hear within that, I want to say, I think you can also conjure up the feelings regardless of the outside circumstance. That's really hard to do, to direct into that kind of thinking. I can feel happy even without my piece of chocolate. I can experience joy. I mean, the power of the imagination, it truly is powerful I mean, we have athletes who do this all the time who, imagine themselves making the perfect shot, the perfect swing, the perfect throw, seeing themselves doing it. Like, I think it's that golfer who says he always imagines himself exactly how he's going to hit the ball before he steps up to hit the ball to see where he wants it to go. And it's all happening in his mind, and his brain fires off as if it's actually happening. So you have enough experiences. I'm just going to go ahead, like Sherry, that of eating chocolate, you could probably conjure that same feeling up without having a piece at all. Anyway, I'm just going off on a rant on how the brain sort of it works, and we can use it for our benefit.
Yeah, the brain is definitely very powerful. All right. Well, it sounds like we'll have to have a couple of follow-up conversations from different things we've touched on today. So what exciting projects do you guys have going? Where can people find you?
I think for me, my big project right now is to really work on, I've really had a heart for the clergy, for people who are spiritual leaders, and I've been trying to keep things together because it's been a mess of a year for them too, just as the rest of us. So we've been putting together a burnout recovery course, and so they can find that on my site, the misfitrefuge.com, or just at my name, MatthewEMorgan.com.
Marlena?
Beautiful. Yeah, because I talked so much about meditation today, I actually felt inspired to create a couple meditation audios. One is for beginners, and I have you do some movement in it first so that you can settle the body, and then it's supposed to be fun and help you smile and feel good. And the other one's to reduce stress and anxiety and learn to ask for help in the meditation. So you can get those at coachmarlena.com/homepage, because I have not put them on a separate page yet, but I'm very excited. I like to practice what I preach and give away what's been helpful for me. So yeah,
that's great. I am in the middle of launching my married dating program, which is a structured dating program for couples who are married so that they can reclaim and rekindle that love that they started with. Oh, and you can find that at sherrytimko.com.
Awesome.
All right. So thank you for joining us at the Happy and the Mess podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, download, and subscribe. If something we may have said really spoke to you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. We'll be joining you again right here next week.